Hey, I'm Alex,
And I'm Brandon.
and welcome to Living Electric.
We're both content creators and electric vehicle enthusiasts.
And through this podcast, we hope to share our experience with owning electric vehicles and help you join the electric life. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 6 of Living Electric. We've got a special guest on today's podcast, Brendan Kelley. He's the director of Drive Electric Ohio here in Ohio, aptly named. He's just bought a new Model 3, correct? So that's your new EV for the family.
Yeah, we actually are picking it up on Monday evening. So in just
Awesome.
a few days.
Ah, that's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, and that'll be my first EV.
That's
personally.
right, yeah. And you said you eventually want to get to a two-car EV family. So what's the other car you drive right now?
So right now we've got a Toyota Prius 2014. It's not it's a non-plug-in hybrid.
Yeah.
And so, like most people, I can't just afford to go out and buy a new car.
Yeah.
And I started this role a little over 3 years ago and had bought a car within the past year. And so while I love EVs, I couldn't just go out and get one. So we actually took advantage of the opportunity of the pandemic to go down to being a one-car family. I was working from home. My wife was working from home. Somebody left the house in a car 2 days a week at most.
Yeah.
And so we didn't need a second car, so we got rid of it. And then, my toddler is starting school, and people are, at least in our world, in our bubble, are largely vaccinated and masking, and so we're comfortable sending her to school. And so, I'm going to go back to the office. So we need a second car, and so we decided to go the electric route because at this point, basically everybody's next car should be electric.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's
Definitely agree
the
with
sentiment we've heard from a lot of people is that it's not for me right now and it's going to be my next car, or I'm looking at one right now is kind of what we hear from a lot of people, which is really exciting. So do you want to give us kind of a brief overview of Drive Electric Ohio, your role with them, and kind of what the work you guys are doing right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So Drive Electric Ohio is a program of Clean Fuels Ohio, which is the organization. So Clean Fuels Ohio is a transportation-focused nonprofit. Our mission, kind of colloquially, is to help Ohio thrive both economically and environmentally through the deployment of cleaner, advanced alternative fuels vehicles. And so Clean Fuels Ohio as an organization is fuel and technology inclusive, anything cleaner than petroleum. And that makes, fuels other than electric make sense for other use cases, particularly medium and heavy duty vehicles. But with the advent of kind of mass availability of electric vehicles, we started the Drive Electric Ohio program. And so that is our comprehensive approach to accelerating electric vehicle adoption. And so there are 7 pillars to the Drive Electric Ohio initiative. Let's see if I can remember them all while I'm under the gun here. So we have chapters of EV owners and enthusiasts that we support and mobilize and partner with to do consumer education. And then they also do a lot of work reaching out to local actors in their community, whether those are auto dealerships or potential businesses that can potentially host workplace charging or public or consumer facing charging, and they're a fantastic group of folks. And then Alex, you're a member of the Drive Electric Columbus chapter, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
I try to go to as many meetings as I can.
It's appreciated. And then we also do a lot of local, state, and federal policy work because that has such a big impact on on EVs, both adoption and production. And then we do a lot of work with auto dealerships and vehicle manufacturers. We do work with electric utilities and utility regulators because of the important role they play in this. And then we do work around fleet electrification and charging infrastructure deployment, and then as its own standalone pillar, but also increasingly foundational to all the work that we do work around equity and access and environmental justice. So I've been leading the program for a little over 3 years now, and my friends like to say that I somehow found the only non-slimy overlap between car salesman and politician. Although
That's awesome.
That's great.
working with a lot of auto dealers and having a lot of my professional backgrounds in government and politics, I know a lot of fantastic folks in both of those arenas. So the stereotypes are not all true.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love what I do. I love the impact. I love getting people to put their foot down on the accelerator of an EV for the first time. There's one of my favorite noises in the world is what I call the EV whoop, which is the noise the first time they feel the acceleration of an EV. And so, and that's true from just people who are, potential consumers looking at next car, all the way to, policymakers. I mean, we by creating opportunities for people to feel the technology, get a personal, visceral experience with the vehicles, and see that all of their misconceptions disappear in about a second and a half. And we've seen like policymakers do complete 180s on pro EV policy because they took a test drive.
That's crazy.
So
yeah.
Well, it's just the technology is so compelling in and of itself that really so much of what I do is figure out how do I get more people to experience it themselves, because then it just sells itself.
Exactly.
They're smoother, they're quieter, they're cooler, they're at this point financially a better choice, compared to an ICE vehicle. They're cleaner. I mean, my 3-year-old, I think that the really catastrophic, we're going to see bad impacts of climate change, but the really catastrophic stuff is coming in like 2070. My 3-year-old's going to be in her early 50s at that point. I mean, that's not old.
Yeah.
And so, trying to leave a better world for her and for my 12-year-old, and really, for myself, that's a lot of what motivates me to do this work. Plus, I get to drive really cool cars.
Yeah, I think that's what Alex and I like the most too, is that we get to drive such cool cars and educate about electric vehicles, but at the end of the day it's also doing good. It's not like you still get to experience what performance is, but you're also still helping the environment, you're still educating people, and you're making a difference. And to me, it's almost like the perfect combination.
Yeah, absolutely. I love finding those kind of win-wins all around, right? Like you're doing the right thing, you're doing fun things. I mean, for National Drive Electric Week 2 years ago, I took my family to test drive EVs, and then took a bunch of adorable pictures of at the time, she was, like less than a year old. Maybe she was a little over a year old, sitting in the driver's seat of a car, holding the steering wheel, and kind of looking at me like, "Dad, what am I doing?" So, it's a fun thing that I get to do, and I can bring my family into it. And so, yeah, it's great.
So what would you say on the policy side? Because you mentioned you have a background in politics, and kind of on that side of things, what do you feel like is the biggest hurdle right now for increasing EV adoption on the political side?
That's a good question. Like so many parts of this work, there are a lot of different pieces to it. We're at about 28,500 registered EVs in Ohio right now, according to the most recent data that I've seen from the BMV. And if you look at the kind of month-over-month adoption and registration numbers compared to previous years, the numbers are going up dramatically.
It's
in Ohio.
Wild. Yeah.
We do have some concerns about the registration fee in Ohio holding back adoption here, especially compared to surrounding states. When you're paying $200 a year, especially as we're looking to get this more and more mass market, maybe for somebody buying a super expensive car, that's not as burdensome. But when you're looking at like a used Bolt or Leaf for $11,000, $12,000, $15,000, $200 a year, and you're somebody who just needs it to like get to work, and $200 a year starts to really wipe out some of the economic benefit of getting an EV. So that's problematic. And then on the other hand, because so much of this is around just getting people the experience of EVs, it's really important that there be support, there be kind of tools, technologies, that policies that encourage talking about them, that encourage promotion of them. And so, I mean, what we've seen is that EV adoption follows policy, and EV production follows adoption. I mean, that's why there's so much EV production happening in Europe, happening in China, because they have supportive policies. And for Ohio being an auto manufacturing state, we're the number 2 state in the country when it comes to providing parts and vehicles.
Wow.
This is where the industry is going. I mean, that I was talking to somebody a few weeks ago, and we were talking about some policy that we're working on. And they said, well, this is all good, but I don't want to pick winners and losers. The winners have already been picked. Industry picked the winners. They're investing. I think the most recent number I've seen is they're investing close to $500 billion over the next between now and 2030, less than 10 years.
Wow, that's incredible.
In shifting production to EV manufacturing. The auto manufacturers are doing that, and they have to plan on a pretty significant time scale, and so they're making decisions right now about where those factories are going.
Yeah,
it's really important that if we want to, continue to have a really robust auto manufacturing sector in this country, and if we want to build on that, that we have policies that are supportive of EV adoption and production. So there's a lot of different policy pieces to it.
Definitely,
that was a very long-winded answer to your
no,
very
that's
simple
great
question. But there's a lot that goes into it.
Definitely.
Brendan, I actually have a question regarding another hurdle that at least I'm seeing from comments like on Facebook and some on Twitter with the infrastructure, not necessarily like the utilities, but like the charging station availability with the amount of electric cars, or at least manufacturers going towards electric vehicles. How do you feel that could be addressed?
Yeah. So charging infrastructure, companies that put out charging infrastructure are doing fantastic work. That we work with a lot of them: Greenlots, ChargePoint, Blink Charging, a whole the Clipper Creek. There's a lot of great companies out there that are really trying to fill this need in the market. This kind of, because as you said, charging infrastructure is one of the main barriers to adoption, not because it's necessarily not out there. I mean, at this point, anybody that owns an EV is generally able to find charging without a problem. Multifamily housing being one exception to that. And then to some extent, occasionally reliability of chargers being active. That can certainly be an issue that's important to address. But just in terms of getting the chargers out there, there are a lot of folks that can help with that. Utilities play a great role with that. We've had a couple of strong utility programs in Ohio, with more that are coming down. AEP Ohio has been a real leader on this. AES Ohio in the Dayton area is in the process of standing up a $5.1 million charging program.
Wow.
Duke Energy Ohio has a $15 million proposal in front of the Public Utilities Commission for approval right now. First Energy is looking at doing this. We do a lot of work with electric co-ops, and I was talking to the government affairs director for the Rural Electric Co-op Association the other week or two ago, and he said that it seems like EV charging is becoming increasingly salient to rural electric co-ops on an almost daily basis.
Wow.
So every electric utility is very interested in this, and that's another example of those win-wins where where they get to sell more electrons. They get to take more efficient use of the utility infrastructure they have, because you can EVs can charge basically any time of day or night, and so they can charge when most people aren't using the grid, aren't drawing energy off the grid. But then it also is the right thing to do. So electric utilities have an important role to play. I think government has an important role to play in this, as the market is in the process of getting set up and getting settled. I mean, ultimately, the ideal is for people to want to buy chargers and companies to provide them, and there not to be much need for kind of government or utility involvement. But right now, to bridge the gap between where we are and where we need to be, it's important that some of those larger players provide resources for charging. For charging infrastructure, particularly in use cases that are not moving as fast toward for this. If you're just looking at like in-home charging, people can get that figured out themselves.
Yeah,
If you have a single family home, you probably don't need an incentive. You might need an incentive to enroll in like a program where, incentivized to shift your charging to times when people aren't using the electric grid so much. But where incentives from either utilities or government or other players can be really helpful are with multifamily housing, with rural applications. That's really important. There's some unique issues around utility infrastructure in rural areas, and then urban intra-city charging to support the electrification of transportation network companies like Uber and Lyft and those folks. That's another area that we think is important to incentivize. So there are some specific use cases that are really helpful. Fast charging for corridors is another one that's important to have some incentives. But it's really become I think at this point, more of a sophisticated issue where you have to kind of look at specific use cases and figure out where does the charging need to go and where do you need incentives to actually get people to put charging in.
Definitely. I guess might be a little non-policy, but I guess it could be at the same time, might be more on the federal side. But do you foresee any kind of policy being enacted where we need to have a consistent charging experience across chargers? Because I know I've noticed that just being an EV driver, that every charging station is a little bit different. Every company's doing it slightly different. Do you foresee any kind of like, I don't know if it would be called a mandate or like a like a law in place that says, all right, you need to activate using this standard so that everybody has a consistent way. We need a consistent plug type. Cars need to have this plug on them. Anything like that?
I have a hard time seeing that coming out of the federal government right now, and it may not be necessary. There's been a growing trend among the charging network providers to move closer to standardization, and you see that with the phase out of the plug type and folks allowing charging on each other's networks, and generally speaking, the charging companies understand that the easier this is for the users, the more people are going to use their charging. And so even if they're making it easier to charge on someone else's network, ultimately that's going to lead to more charging for them because more people are going to find it to be a seamless, frictionless experience. And so more people are going to buy EVs, and that's good for everybody. So I think that organizing among industry players is likely to be a more fruitful route to go than pursuing some kind of federal policy.
Yeah, I gotcha. When you've been interfacing with, you mentioned like a ton of different people from utilities to dealerships and stuff like that. Have you seen any sort of pushback from some different sectors of like not wanting to switch to electric, or do you feel like that's changed in recent years where a lot of people have woken up to the idea and are excited about it?
So you do get some holdouts, but the utilities in Ohio are largely get it.
Yeah.
They understand that this is coming. They understand that it has the potential to be really good for them. They understand it has the potential to be really good for their customers. Part of what we do as an organization is we provide kind of really data-driven, outcomes-focused analysis around the deployment of alternative fuels vehicles. And so what that was a lot of jargon. But what that means is we help people understand how to make this technology work for them.
Yeah.
We help them understand how it can be cheaper, how it can be easier, how it can make their lives better. And so you'll have a fleet manager who is just trying to keep their vehicles running and make sure that the needs of their organization are met. And we can come in and say, well, here's how you can do this in a way that saves you money and cuts down on your maintenance costs, and so that's the role that we play. We do a lot of that kind of education.
Yeah.
And it's not from one of the things that I really appreciate about Clean Fuels Ohio is none of this is ideological. It's all there's no you have to do X, Y, and Z regardless of the cost. It's let's crunch the numbers, figure out what's going to work for you, figure out what's on the market, and then we'll hold your hand and work with you and help you create a plan to more effectively use the technology we're recommending. We're not gonna come in and say, well, you need to, electrify vehicles that are gonna blow out your budget, because everybody operates under budget constraints. We are going to come in and say, well, these vehicles make sense to electrify, and here's the money you'll save, and then also here's the environmental impact that you'll have by switching, and it's about finding those win-wins. So there are certainly holdouts, but increasingly people get it. I think that the shift to mass market advertising from the car companies has been a huge help. I mean, when there's a commercial with Will Ferrell played during the Super Bowl, that's very different than the like hyper targeted digital ads that I was getting 2 years ago, because 75% of my Google searches were about EVs. The car companies are all in on this. They're putting real dollars behind shifting their production lines. They're putting real dollars behind marketing and advertising. And then just the news stories about this are also a big deal. So I think that people increasingly get it, and that trend is only going to continue.
Yeah, for sure.
I definitely think that that's the best way to approach the discussion, is just to have a conversation. I think a lot of people tend to get confrontational when it comes to certain change. And if you're just simply providing information and having a very neutral educational conversation, that's at least things that I've seen with people changing mindset. I have a lot of petrol heads, if you want to consider them as friends. People are really into combustion vehicles, and we have conversations about electric vehicles all the time, but it didn't start that way. It kind of transitioned into that, and it's been for the better. All of them are very accepting of that now and very supportive of, an electric future. It's a great approach.
Do you have an EV, Brandon?
I have two. Yeah, we have.
Nice.
Yeah, we just bought an ID4, and we have a Chevy Bolt that I am hoping to trade in for a Tesla one day. But that's the plan.
Have you given them the chance to drive your car?
Oh, yeah. My husband is actually part of a racing group, so we take the cars to the racetracks, and we've driven over 1,000 miles to different tracks and proved to them that you can do road trips in an electric car. And it just, they're all impressed about it. They love going to dinner in the car, and yeah.
That's awesome.
I like to have fun with them.
Yeah, there's nothing like leaving them in your dust to show them that the technology is real and here and better than what they have. So, and what you said about just having those conversations, that's where I think the Drive Electric chapters that we work with, the EV owner and enthusiast chapters, are such a vital piece of this. I mean, there's nobody better to persuade somebody to buy an EV than somebody who's not really trying to persuade them, but is just talking about, like, I'm a normal person. I take my kids to school. I go to work. I go to the grocery store, and I do it in an EV. And here's how I do it. And you can take my car for a spin, so you can feel it yourself. And just giving people that exposure, giving people the chance to have a conversation, ask the questions about things that they're scared about. Do you ever run out of battery on the road? No, because I plug into my garage. I have a full battery every morning, and I don't drive 200 plus miles a day, because that's what batteries can give you now. Or are you worried it's going to catch fire? Well, there are vastly more gas cars that catch on fire than EVs every year. So is it affordable? Absolutely, it's affordable. Are my options a luxury car or a golf cart? No, there are a host of options in between those two. Can I get a pickup truck? Next year you can get a pickup truck. So I mean, at this point, basically every concern that people have can be addressed, or we're within 1 to 2 years of addressing. I'm really excited about the 8 or 9 electric pickup truck models that are going to hit the market in the next year or two. Yeah, that's going to be a total game changer.
Definitely.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I heard Rivian is actually starting deliveries next month.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's so exciting.
That's the one I'm excited for.
Yeah, and then the Ford F-150 is I believe it's the best selling vehicle in America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for like 30 something years straight, I think. Like it's been a long time.
And Ford is prioritizing, all these automakers are dealing with a chip shortage right now. And I believe Ford is prioritizing putting the computer chips they have into their electric F-150s
Wow.
because they understand that this is the direction it's going. They understand that, if the pickup truck market is the biggest market segment in America, whoever gets to electrify it first is going to be really well set up for their company's future. And so they're aggressively making a play for that. And that's awesome. I want all of these automakers aggressively making a play for electric market share.
Definitely. Were you all involved with the Smart Columbus ride and drive events, or was that a whole separate thing?
So yeah, Clean Fields Ohio worked pretty closely with Smart Columbus.
Okay.
We in a whole bunch of different ways. I mean, their ride and drive program was largely done by them in house, and
I gotcha.
they had a very different model than we did, which actually was really complementary. They had a highly produced, paid program, and I think it's to date the largest ride and drive program in the country. They did like 12,000 test drives
Yeah, it
in
was
just a couple
lot.
years.
Wow.
But because yeah, right. I mean, and that single-handedly like changed the face of EV adoption in Central Ohio, and hats off to them for the amazing work they did because they had a paid ride and drive model.
And by paid, do you mean people or like site hosts had to pay them to come and host their vehicles, or what do you mean
No,
by
they
paid?
like they had like paid staff who
Oh,
worked
gotcha.
the
Okay.
events, and yeah, sorry, that's what I meant by that. So because they had just a higher level of cost per event, they had to have a certain floor on the number of test drives that they were going to get per event, which makes
Gotcha.
sense. And I think that they set that floor at 100. And so, they were working with all the biggest employers in the region. They were working, with, they had a strong presence at different festivals and things like that. And so they were able, and they did more than 12,000 test drives. So clearly what they did was working. And because they were a very prominent, visible presence in the community, people reached out to them and say, hey, can you do a test drive with me? And they unfortunately had to say no if the number of drives fell under that threshold. Well, because we work with the Drive Electric chapters, we have a lot of volunteers who bring their own vehicles. We have a very low operating cost, and so for our events, we can do that very, very efficiently. And that means that we don't have to have a floor on the number of drives. And so we've done very large ride and drives, so we've had well over 100 test drives happen. But we've also done ride and drive events that you can't see me doing air quotes because we're on audio. We've done ride and drives where it's like one car in someone's driveway where a person invites two of their neighbors over.
I gotcha.
We can do kind of the full range of events like that. And so and so Smart Columbus, when they would get these requests, would say, well, we can't do it, but you should talk to Clean Fields Ohio. And so we had and that's just one example of the many ways that we had a great kind of partnership and working relationship with them. So we worked with them, and they're fantastic, and I really like all those folks.
Brendan, I do have a question as a Clevelander. It seems like Columbus, at least from my experience, always gets the the cool events and the Drive Electric events. We do have a really good group up here of like EV enthusiasts, but I've always wondered, how could we make the group up here more involved with like groups like Columbus?
There are some initiatives that are happening in Northeast Ohio that are, I think, going to really start to help things take off there. The Northeast Ohio Area-Wide Coordinating Agency, or NOACA, much easier to say NOACA, but I don't know that people would necessarily know what I meant if I said that. But yeah, so NOACA is in the process of rolling out a $3 million charging infrastructure program in their 5-county footprint, kind of in the Cleveland metro area. $3 million of charging is going to that's going to make a difference. People are going to notice.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're leading the way on using certain type of federal dollars to do this kind of charging program. And we're actually trying to work with other metropolitan planning organizations around the state to do something similar to what NOAC is doing. We appreciate their leadership on this. So I think that having increasingly those kinds of efforts, those kinds of programs, that really helps gin up a lot of interest, create a lot of conversation, that then makes the work of the EV owners chapter a lot easier.
Yeah.
I'm sure that Michael Peters, who is the leader of the Drive Electric Northeast Ohio chapter, he's also the CEO of Sway Mobility, which is a fantastic company in this space.
He
I'm
lives
sure that
down
Michael
the street
Peters.
from me.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that Michael Peters would love to have, kind of everything that we've had in Central Ohio, like with Smart Columbus and the massive corporate buy-in and the massive local government buy-in, and we are working with him to try and create some of that. The Greater Cleveland Partnership is really interested in this stuff. I think Nicole Sticka there is a great partner. Mike Foley, the Cuyahoga County Sustainability Director, is a fantastic partner. There are a lot of folks that are doing really good work in Northeast Ohio, and some of this is just, when does it catch fire? Every overnight success worked on this for 10 or 15 years before they became an overnight success, right? And so, there are a lot of fantastic people in the Cleveland area that are working really hard on this. And at some point, it just, a switch flips and it catches fire. But until then, it takes people like Michael Peters and Mike Foley and Nicole Sticka and others to keep on saying this is good. This is good for our region. This is good for businesses and good for local governments and good for individual car owners. And how do we do more of this? And it'll happen. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely something I've been pushing for up here with the group too, with being involved more with Michael Peters and the rest of the chapter up here. So I thoroughly enjoyed of course. I thoroughly enjoyed the event in Kenton, and I loved working with everybody from Drive Electric Columbus. So I was actually talking with Alex, we should do a massive Ohio meetup somewhere and just get all the chapters together once things clear up with with the pandemic.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. We just brought on a new outreach and organizing manager. Her name is Vashida Johnson, and she has a fantastic background in issue and community and political organizing, and so I think that's the kind of thing that she would be very interested in putting together. And so we'd love to do that
for sure. Yeah, we'll have to set something up. So I know you got to hop off soon. Do you want to give, I guess, some people some advice of how they can get involved in either their local groups, if they own an EV, but also if they're interested in EVs, where they can find you guys, or where they can find their local Drive Electric chapter, I guess, in their area? I know majority of our audience is in Ohio, so this is going to be applicable to them, but we do have some surrounding states as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is cleanfuelsohio.org. Clean, like not dirty, fuels, plural, Ohio, the state.org. And you can reach out to us through there. Right now there are 7 chapters, 7 Drive Electric chapters in Ohio. Northeast Ohio, kind of Cleveland, Akron, and then Columbus, Cincinnati, Dayton, Athens, Mansfield, Northwest Ohio, kind of the Toledo, Bowling Green, Perrysburg area. And let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, okay. I named all 7. So that's where we have the chapters right now. They can email Vashida if they want to get involved. Her email address is Vashida, V as in Victor, ASHITTA @cleanfuelsohio.org. And she can help get folks connected to their Drive Electric chapter. And if folks live in a part of the state where they don't have a Drive Electric chapter currently, we'd love to work with you to start one. Awesome. We have folks all over the state, but we don't have universal coverage.
Yeah.
And really, it just takes one excited EV owner, and at this point, basically all EV owners are passionate about owning EVs. So an EV and a little bit of passion, and you can get a Drive Electric chapter started in your area. So and then there's a pretty strong social media presence as well. Mm-hmm. There's a Drive Electric Ohio Twitter, Drive Electric Ohio Facebook, and then all the chapters have their own social media too. So there's a lot of ways to find us, and we'd love to get folks involved in the chapter in the area or help start a chapter if there isn't one.
We'll have all that linked down in the show notes too, so you don't have to just type it in manually, hopefully.
Yeah. If you weren't taking notes, sorry, folks.
Cool. Well, thank you so much again for being on, and we'll talk to everybody in the next episode.